Hello, Doc David. Good afternoon.
Hi, Flor.
Hi, ma'am.
Ah? Ay, ang labi-labi ka. Labi-labi ka.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Nadula ko, how?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Doc Feli.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Doc David.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Kita nyo ko nga ang nadula ang inyong screen.
Yes, ma'am. We could clearly see you, ma'am.
Mabatian ka namon, ma'am. Kag makita ka namon.
Wala ko dahil earphone.
Yes, ma'am, we can see you.
Ara na. Pero ang
ma'am.
ang kwan niya, ang dali lang kay ma-share tani ko sang kwan power.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please stand by for a moment as we are going to start the program in a few minutes. While setting up, we would like to remind everyone to follow etiquette or house rules. First, can you open your camera? Second, please always mute your mic. Third, use headphones or earphones. Fourth, find a seat or location that is comfortable and well lighted. Fifth, it is advised to wear business or smart casual attire when attending. Sixth, finish the whole virtual conference and complete the evaluation for you to get your certificate. Seventh, always direct your concern through PM or personal message on our page or our email address so that we can provide answer to your concern. Thank you.
Sound check. Sound check.
Ang check, bation ko.
Yes, Doc David, we can hear you.
Ara nang
Ano, ma'am? Dira na lang. Sige, sige.
While setting up, we would like to greet everyone who are attending this afternoon, especially the students, the graduate students of the Iloilo Science and Technology University who are having the research subject this afternoon. We are also live on the POMI YouTube channel and the Facebook page of Philippine Institute of 21st Century Educators. We are joined by educators from the basic and higher education institution this afternoon, not only in the Region 6, but also from other schools all over the Philippines. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Good afternoon once again, and welcome to the National Virtual Conference for 21st Century Educators by the Philippine Institute of 21st Century Educators Incorporated. This conference is titled The Research Methodology for Teachers and Students, a Simplified Approach. Developing a culture of research-oriented organization is an integral function of the educational institutions. Through research, faculty and staff and students will be equipped with values and beliefs essential to the proper appreciation of our culture for sustainable development of the nation as a whole. More specifically, it is the heart, especially of every basic and higher education institutions. It has been said, there can be no progress without research in almost, if not all, human endeavors, in government, in education, in trade and commerce, and in all types and kinds of industries. Research is vital and essential. If it further serves as the strongest link between knowledge and technology. Through research, knowledge is transformed into technology. The appreciation of technology would bring about development and progress. Research has been a formidable academic tradition to push the frontiers of learning and to improve the service delivery of our institutions. Developing a culture of research in any institution in light of the thrust towards innovations and creative solutions to post-modern day problems is very imperative. The Philippine Institute of 21st Century Educators, or PICE 21, just like other higher professional organization of educators in the Philippines, continuously gearing forward in producing research outputs and in developing a research-oriented academic culture. Nevertheless, taking this into account, it is a challenge posted for the 21st century mentors and educators in the Philippine educational system on how they can provide the future knowledge contributors and intellectual members of the society of what they need to be able to cope with the challenges of the changing times. Hence, this National Virtual Conference for 21st Century Educators with the title, Research Methodology for Teachers and Students, a Simplified Approach, this 22nd of May, 2021, 2 p.m. Philippine Standard Time. To begin, let us open our hearts and minds for the prayer. Let us bow our heads and feel the presence of the Lord. Our most gracious and heavenly Father, we thank you for this life and for this afternoon's learning opportunity that we are gathered here virtually to learn new insights and knowledge from our invited speaker. Thank you for making us become productive members of the labor force and the intellectual community, but also your audience in spreading your divine words and never-ending love and blessings. May you continue to bless those persons who have been instrumental in the realization of this event, particularly the organizers, speaker, and other dear participants. May your divine love will continue to safeguard us against the harm of this COVID-19 pandemic. May you also forgive us for our trespasses, as we forgive those who sinned against us. This we pray in the name of our personal Lord and Savior, your only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Good afternoon once again. It is my honor and pride to introduce to you our resource speaker for this afternoon. Our resource speaker is a native of Haro, Iloilo City. She finished her Bachelor of Science in Education major in English from the Central Philippine University in 1969. Her Master of Science in Applied Socio-Anthro from the Ateneo de Manila University as Ford Foundation Scholar in 1980, and her Doctor of Education from the Central Philippine University in 1996. She also attended special studies and formal training, like the Certificate in Online Teaching and Learning from the UPOU, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Laguna, Hagay Faculty Development Training, International Training Institute in Maui, Hawaii, Special Christian Leadership Training from Hagay Institute in Singapore, training course in the use of the statistical package in social sciences in research in UP Diliman, and research training course in rural development, East-West Center in Honolulu, Hawaii in USA. She was also able to receive various scholarships, awards, and grants from different entities. To mention a few, we have Ford Foundation Research Training Grant, Technology and Development Institute, East-West Center in Hawaii, Excel Professorial Chair from the Central Philippine University, Lewin Professorial Chair, Central Philippine University, Larson Professorial Chair from Central Philippine University, and Excel Professorial Chair from Central Philippine University also, and Howard Professorial Chair from the same university. She was able to serve as Dean, School of Graduate Studies of Central Philippine University in 1997 to 2013 until her retirement, as Director of Social Science Research Institute from the Central Philippine University, and as Officer in Charge of English Department of College of Arts and Sciences, also from the same university. She was a university professor from 1990 until her retirement in 2013, an associate professor from the College of Arts and Sciences, an international lecturer at the Hagay International Leadership Training Center in Singapore campus, resident coordinator of the International Leadership Training in Hagay Institute in Maui, Hawaii. She was able to serve as consultant in research or statistics from various agencies, organizations, and individuals, like the Department of Trade and Industry, Canadian International Development Agency, Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, Department of Interior and Local Government, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, the United Nations FPA Project and Reproductive Health in collaboration of the Provincial Government of Capiz, Family Health International, Department of Health Population and Family Planning Projects in the community, and the Department of Social Welfare and Development, World Bank, Office of Population Studies. As a research personality, she was able to secure externally funded studies conducted from 2001 to present. She was able to conduct more than 50 studies from 1980 to 2001. All her studies were funded by regional, national, and international agencies. To name a few, there is an intervention study for men for the prevention of domestic violence in collaboration with the De La Salle University in Taft, Manila. Reproductive Health Quality of Care Survey in the province of Capiz. public health survey in 7 barangays in the vicinity of Panay Power Plant. Group counseling as an approach to family planning, promotion, and dropout reduction. An evaluation of the integration for integrated population, health, environment, livelihood development program in Caligua Clan. The effects of plant emissions in the environment and health condition in the surrounding communities on the diesel and coal-fired power plant in Iloilo City. An assessment of the impact of the corporate social responsibility program of the Global Business Power Corporation in Iloilo City. And she has also these ongoing researches, the socioeconomic and public health survey in 20 barangays surrounding the diesel and coal-fired power plant in Iloilo City. The effects of the Panay power plant on the environment and health condition of residents in Nabas Aklan. She has also publications and nationally disseminated studies. To name a few from these referred journals, like the Philippine Sociological Review, the Research Report Series of the National Economic Development Authority, Southeast Asia Journal, Philippine Population Journal, Philippine Sociological Review, Asian Journal in Women's Studies. And our speaker was also able to attend and participate in various trainings, seminars, and conferences, and serve in various capacities such as resource person, lecturer, discussant or reactor, judge, or paper presenter in more than 100 local, regional, national, and international conferences. At present, although she is retired already, but she is still serving at the Central Philippine University as university professor, as part-time university professor in 2013 to 14 until the present, and a thesis and a dissertation advisor of several master's and doctoral students in the Central Philippine University. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow colleagues in the academy, let us welcome Dr. Fadi David. Dr. David, please take it away. Good afternoon.
Hello? Kailangan na yung pangayuan naman nila ako bago ma-password. Dali lang ha. But I already, am I already auto-sharing?
Not yet, Dr. David.
Ha?
Not yet.
Naging pangayuan na ara na ko kaina. They are now again asking me. In-close siguro nyo kaina how? Dali lang, mangita ko na isang, ano ni? Sa, dali lang,
You have started screen sharing, Dr. David. You have started already.
Ara na? So I don't have to go back.
Share doc.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. David, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon.
Good
Good afternoon.
I sent an updated introduction, but that was really not necessary anymore to read everything. But anyway, I feel so old. Actually, I'm really old already. All right, the title of the seminar or the lecture that you gave me is Research Methodology for Teachers and Students, a Simplified Approach. Okay, but I added a subtopic because I'd like to be a motivational speaker today. So I'm entitling my lecture today as the Research Challenge. Learn it, do it, and enjoy it. Oh, by the way, while I am presenting, it's okay for you to stop me somewhere or anywhere if you have any question or any comment. And will somebody please put my face somewhere in the corner so they can see me as I talk? Can anybody do that? Secretariat, please.
Yes, Dr. David, we'll do it for you.
Because I don't feel comfortable looking at the PowerPoint without me talking. All right. So let me start with a little introduction. Research is very important in education, especially in higher education. And for those who plan to do research, it's very important that you know the functions of research. And there are three functions actually, although sa mga SUC, you have a third function, which is production. So basically, research is used for instruction, for extension. No? So we have research, extension, and instruction as the triangle of the major functions of research. But in some universities, especially in SUCs, you add production. How is research connected to human development in general? First of all, we can divide research into two kinds. Now, you have the basic research and the applied research. The basic research usually deals with search for new knowledge, like mga surveys, etc. And this new knowledge is expected to improve skills, attitudes, and behaviors. So for teachers, for instance, why do we do research? Because we want to know new things. We want to discover new strategies. We want to understand existing problems so that we would be able to improve our attitude and behaviors towards teaching. And if we have better skills, attitudes, and behavior, we will be able to improve our teaching practices and service delivery. And that improved practices and service delivery are expected to produce better quality of life, not only to our students, but also to the community. The second type of research is the applied research. The applied research is usually the experimental research. So the experimental research can produce new technology, new practices, new devices, and new applications. And if you have this, what comes out would be you develop new tools, new devices, new equipment. In the area, the area of medicine, for example, new technology and new knowledge about devices and equipment are produced. State-of-the-art diagnostics, state-of-the-art treatment materials, and also in the field of engineering, you develop many other devices that are expected also to improve practices, service delivery, and eventually better quality of life. Let's go now to the next, all right? Learning research. I assume that since all of you are enrolled in research, and some teachers are enrolled in the graduate programs and also maybe teaching research, let's just review the research process. All right, here is a picture of the whole thing. Dali lang anay makuha ko anay tubig. Papa, padali ko anay tubig, please. Tubig anay. Usually, pila gani, how many steps are we taught sa elementary kita, sa high school, and when we are in college, we're only tubig. Ang iling tubig. Tubig. Dali ako bili tubig. Lagi ako tubig. Tingnan tubig. Okay, the 5 steps. The 5 steps are usually divided into 5 general scientific process. If you will recall, Beth, may I ask anybody to tell me what are the 5 steps that we were taught in high school and in college, some scientific process? Can anybody recite? Can we do an interactive lesson here so that daw hindi man kita tamaan ka-boring? Can anybody please tell me the first step in research in the 5 steps that we are usually familiar with?
Generate the problem.
Statement of the problem.
So you
Determining the research problem.
want, yeah. Once you have the problem, what do you do next? Ang 5 steps,
Gather ng data na, ma'am.
Gathering data, ma'am.
gather the data that would
Formulate
your hypothesis formulation.
formulate hypothesis.
Yes, formulating.
Hypothesis.
Mag-hypothesis muna tayo bago tayo.
Yes.
Review of related literature po.
Excuse me, I'm talking of the 5 I'm talking of the 5 steps that we were taught. Yung mga review of related literature sa graduate school lang na. 5 lang. Problem identification,
Problem, hypothesis,
formulation, data collection,
data collection,
Interpretation of data
of data,
and presentation of
and then
data.
conclusion.
yun ang 5, diba? We were taught those 5 steps. However, today, because we want you to learn research the easy way, or the more motivating way, these are the steps, the main steps, and the sub-steps that research undertakes. Okay, so under identification and definition of the research problem, there are 3 sub-steps, which is the identification of the objectives or statement of the problem, the formulation of the theoretical and conceptual framework, wherein you have that diagram or paradigm. Then once you have identified your framework, you identify and operationalize your variables. Once this is true, you now formulate your research hypothesis. And once you have done that, you will already be able to identify what research design to use, identify your target population and sampling procedure. Then once you have already your sources of data, you now go to the field to collect the information. In data collection, there are again 4 sub-steps. The first one is the preparation of the research instrument, testing the reliability and validity of the instrument. Then you administer the instrument either by interview, testing, or observation. It depends on what kind of research you are talking about. And of course, do not forget that we also want quality control. Quality control means those are supervision of data gathering, editing of completed data instrument to make sure that the data you have collected, whether it is experimental or non-experimental, to make sure that the data you're collected were not collected under the mango tree, to make sure that they are really data that are collected in the field. Once the data come in, you go to data processing, and I think we are all fortunate now because data processing has become so easy and convenient because of statistical softwares that are available. There are so many. In fact, Excel can already be used for data processing, but here in CPU and in some universities, we use either SAS or SPSS. And we also have other packages that you can get online. Processing would mean encoding, data entry, and then generating files, and then tabulation, and then before that, before you go to data analysis and interpretation. Once the data have been analyzed, interpreted, you report your data and disseminate the information. So these are the steps. However, because I'm only given 1 hour and a half today, I will only tackle up to data collection. Data processing and data analysis should be another day of lecture. You can hire somebody to do that later on. Now, naghang tapon. There. Now, let's start with the first. Have you ever experienced the problem of not having a problem? Sino sa inyo?
Yes,
Doc.
Or sometimes overloaded with problems, hindi mo na alam kung ano yung gusto mong problem.
Yeah. In fact, you know, I was dean of the graduate school for 16 years. So can you imagine, kada semester, the complaint of many students, "Ma'am, my problem is that I don't have a problem." For all those years, I have been teaching research. Research, ginang akong specialization. And until now, I'm still teaching research. And would you believe I'm even teaching research in a medical college here in Iloilo City because they don't have anyone to teach the subject. So they bargained if I could teach research at the Iloilo Doctors College of Medicine. So the biggest problem you and student researchers face is finding or identifying researchable problem. The common complaint is, "Ma'am, I do not have a problem yet." All right, let's look at the house. Tuduan ta kamo kung paano magpangita sang problema nga mahapos. Hey, where are you? Nakadula akong kuan how. All right, so the first thing, I have 4 or 5 questions asked when you decide on a problem. The first question that we usually ask is, when nabaliskad niya? All right. Now, the first question is, what is the problem? So ask yourself, what are you worried? Remember, a research problem is defined as something that makes you uncomfortable. It is something that worries you. It is something that you want a solution to. So that you would not get overwhelmed by so many problems, tanungin mo yung sarili mo, ano bang gusto kong sagutin? Ano bang sinasabing problema? And here are some problems that you may want to address. 1, question that needs to be answered. Okay, maraming tanong, no? There are so many questions. Examples. How are students and teachers cope with the challenges of online learning and teaching? Problema ba yan?
Yes, ma'am.
Some of you are having mental problems and
Yes, Doc, it's a problem.
Stress.
yeah.
Stressful.
It's a big problem nowadays.
In other words, your stress is not like my stress or like anybody's stress. But as teachers, we don't have but to address that stress, otherwise we could not be good teachers. Another problem that we have probably that you may want to ask is, why is it that despite very clear dissemination of information on how to prevent or how to reduce the chance of getting COVID, why is it that there are still so many people who refuse to comply with health protocol? Amo na nga nagadamong ka masakit, bang tawo wala gasunod? That could be a good research problem. What are the reasons why people refuse to comply with health protocols? What are the possible factors that can address the problem? Okay, so that's one type. Another situation is we have to look for difficulties that should be eliminated. There are things that are existing and you said, "O tani, wala na." Paano? So example, in teaching, we always are confronted with anxiety of students. That's why when they take up exams, bisan kabalo sila, kakalagpok sila. Okay, so one is how to reduce anxiety. It could be math anxiety, it could be concentration anxiety, but it's anxiety. And anxiety, when you experience anxiety, makes it difficult for you to function because you are anxious. Either gakuba-kuba ang imudugan, o kaya nagapamalas ka, o kaya you cannot do things straight. So that's a difficulty. So maybe you would like to find out how can anxiety be reduced. So if you have, for example, some processes that can be used, you can try that. Another problem that you want to eliminate is cheating. Daw halos tanan nga ginahimo sang mga eskwelahan kag mga maestra to reduce cheating. This has been a perennial problem. Pero gapangupya gihapon ang mga estudyante. Kupya gihapon. Bisan pa gani madakpan ilang pukon mo, makupya man gihapon. So it's like cheating. It's like corruption in government. You know that corruption is cheating actually. Stealing is cheating. Getting properties of others is cheating. So that's a difficulty that can be eliminated. So that's another kind of problem that you can think of. Another kind of problem is some devices or softwares or drugs or approaches that needs to be developed, tested, and evaluated. You know what? There are so many creative Filipinos. We have a lot of students who are very creative and proactive and how to develop things. So, bisa na lang gani, eroplano nga palupadon mo, padalong, pababaw. That's creativity. If you recall, several years ago, ang mga wala pa na sang una drone, wala pa na sang una cellphone nga two angles back to back, side by side, ang capturing sang camera. In fact, the cameras of cell phones these are products of creativity. So if you have creative minds and you know of something that you can do, that's research. You develop a device, a technology, a system that can improve readiness, respond to disaster, respond to flood, fire, earthquake, or you can develop a device that can protect your home from stealers. You can, sang una, sa ka-creative sang mga estudyante, ga-create sila sang device on how to cheat. Ang iba masulat sa plate sang palda, mga babae. Ang mga lalaki masulat sa dapa-dapa. So many. But if some device that you can create can be used positively, and by developing that device, that requires a research technique and a research strategy. Okay, here's another set. All right. Another possible research area is theories. We have been exposed to a lot of theories in school. Like, we're so familiar with Maslow's theory of needs. We are familiar with Bandura's social learning theory. We have heard about self-belief theory. We have heard about planned behavior theory. And we have principles in engineering. We have principles in mathematics. And some of these, by the way, have been developed long time ago. In fact, ang stimulus response theory was developed pa in mga 1920s. Bandura developed social learning theory in the 40s. And many other theories have been developed long time ago. I'm sure some of you have learned about Freudian theory of infantile sexuality. The question is, research does not accept all these theories all throughout, because we have defined the theory is accepted as true until it is proven what? Come on. Theory is accepted as true or correct until it is proven blank.
Tested.
Huh?
Tested.
Not yet. No, you're
Proven in study.
Yes, it is tested.
Proven in study.
But when you test,
Proven false.
yes, correct. A theory is accepted
Proven in study
until it is proven false. In other words,
yes.
existing theories can still be modified. Existing theories can be verified. And by this through research and the data that you collect, especially when you're doing qualitative research, you can modify theories, or you can even look at two conflicting theories. Kaya may mga conflicting theories mo. And then come up with something that is hybrid. Hybrid meaning you can fuse two theories. For example, have you heard about the nature and nurture debate?
Yes, Doc.
All right. One that supports nature means that a man is born, tabula rasa?
Yes, John Locke.
Okay, then you are exposed to an environment, and the environment allows you some inputs, and then that tabula rasa becomes colored and you attain certain behavior taken from the environment. So that is nurture. If you are brought up in a family that has a particular cultural values, the cultural values of the family can be taught at home and even in school, and that can change a person's behavior. On the other hand, nature, the nature side says that, you were born with already with a nature. So masiling ka nga, ikaw, amo kasi na, ay ang tatay mo, amo na. Have you heard
Yes,
that?
Doc.
Ang santo.
Association with genes, with genetic, etc. sa family.
Okay. So, yun ang debate. Ngayon, as a researcher, you can do some research and find out how each of these positions affect a person's behavior. Kung akong tanungin mo, I can say, okay, both theories, both positions contribute to a person's behavior. You have also heard of the X and Y theory. The X,
yes, Doc, sa organization.
The organizational management. Okay. So, in other words, you can do a theoretical research. Yung ang trabaho mo lang, you study the theories or models and find out which of these models or how these models can be modified. I have an example here. You have the reinforcement theory, which produce both negative and positive, or reinforcing negatively and positively. And the question is, I remember when I was in college, we are so engrossed with negative reinforcement. In other words, if you do something wrong, you punish. Right? And then there was the positive reinforcement, which says that every time a student answers correctly, praise him or praise her or recognize him, and that would improve or that would motivate him to do better. The question now is, which of these theories are still relevant today? In Maslow's theory of needs, alam natin, ang sabi ni Maslow, once your needs is satisfied, you go up the higher ladder and your needs improve. And then that needs, when not satisfied, will affect your motivation. But when that need is satisfied, that will increase your motivation. And when sa second level ka na, tataas naman yun. Hanggang you achieve what? Self-actualization. So unless you attain self-actualization, you would keep on looking for motivation. Okay, another problem is an intervention program, a project approach that needs to be tested or evaluated, such as impact evaluation. Yan ang daming programa natin, ang dami nating programa. So in other words, I'm looking at these 5 situations and I said, bakit walang problema? Ang dami nating problema. It's a matter really of identifying which area you want. So for example, meron tayong 4-piece program. Wala pang masyadong, there are some evaluations of 4-piece, but they are usually watak-watak. So maybe in your area, you would like to find out how 4-piece are affecting the lives of people. What I've learned from the community is that anay may 4-piece na nagtamad ang mga tao. I don't know if that's true. Maybe we can find out. So is 4-piece really helping the poor, or has it affected people's desire or people's initiative to look for livelihood, to look for better quality of life, etc.? Another program that we may want to look into, for example, are community pantries. Do you know, alam nyo ba yung community pantries?
Yes, Doc.
Yes po.
Dami pong pila.
Yes.
Ang daming community
Yes, ma'am.
Yes
As
po.
a person, anong possible research ang pwedeng gawin dyan? Marami. Sa community pantries lang you can ask, for example, how many who are availing of community pantries. Another one, perceptions of people about community pantries. Is it true that these are activities of the radicals, of the people who are terroristic in perceptions? Ang iba dito ay magaganda yung mga objective. But then some people misunderstand community pantries. Community pantries alone, ang dami ng research problem dyan. All right, number 2 example, effect of cooperative learning on math performance. Hindi lang ngayon sa math performance, tinitest ang cooperative learning. In fact, even in literature, for those who are teaching English, I used to teach English, and one problem we usually have is how to motivate students to love literature. Some of them don't even care. They don't even know any poem now. Sang una kami, second year high school kami, madamo kami nga memorize nga mga Shakespeare, nga mga Longfellow. Subong, I asked my grandchildren if they know any. Wala. But again, what method of teaching can be tried in order to make performance in whatever subject be effective? Sa field naman of engineering, we can try warning and training devices. The engineers are very creative and scientific in their what you call this? Inventions. Another one is effects of a new vaccine against COVID. Ay, ang damo-damo na subong nga vaccine, but some people don't want to be vaccinated. Ako na-immunize na-inoculate na ko. And then another one about COVID is we can even study people's perceptions about the vaccines. Why is it that some people don't like to be immunized? Why is it that some people do not understand? It's really more of knowing, understanding, etc. So yun. Diba, may problema na kayo, wala pa? Are these not possible areas that you would like to explore? Any comment?
Doc, I think sa mga kasi sa research, sa mga mga researcher, the problem is not really having a problem. It's more on having a lot of problem, parang overloading ang nangyayari. Tapos naguguluhan na yung researcher kung ano ba talaga yung gusto niya. So it ends up na wala talaga siyang, parang naguguluhan na siya sa mga naiisip niya. Kaya sinasabi na lang niya at the end of the day, wala akong maisip na problema kasi ang dami-dami na over-factor overloading.
I think that's not a problem. I think it's really lack of focus. Really lack of focus. Hindi focus. Ang importante kasi is, first of all, before even starting to sit down, the first thing to do is think about what is your priority. Huwag ka munang kasi kayo, naghahanap kasi kayo kaagad ng title. Don't look for a title. Look for these areas and find out what is most relevant ngayon. Anong mga relevant issues ngayon na pwedeng pag-aralan? So for example, if you are an educational management major, anong mga issues sa management? So doon ka lang mag-focus, wag ka lang mag-focus kung saan-saan. Ngayon, if you are naman a social science major, anong mga social issues ang pwede nating pag-aralan? Pag-aralan natin yung mga issues of West Philippine Sea. Pag-aralan natin yung mga sinasabi natin political dynasty. Then, magpumili ka lang muna ng 3 gusto mong pag-aralan. Don't overwhelm yourselves because kasi proseso yan eh. You try one, you look for literature and find out, ano ba to? What is husband said about this? And when you realize na hindi mo gusto yon, then you go to your next choice. Huwag mong sabihin, ano kaya? Ang dami-dami nitong tinuro ni Ma'am David. Saan dito? No, don't do that. I'm only giving you some ideas about what possible areas you can study. So,
actually, Doc, yan din na-observe ko po, Doc. Lack of focus. Tapos yung iba, Doc, even though may gusto silang research, pag iniisip nila yung restriction na sa data gathering and everything, parang na-demotivate sila somehow.
No, I will look into that later on kung paano mo i-handle yung mga limitation. So for example, meron kang naisip, gusto mong pag-aralan yung community pantries. Kaya lang, your source of data will of course be the community. And since community, bawal pumunta sa community. And therefore, you can already set that aside. So ngayon, kung alam mo yung mga restrictions mo, you have to choose a problem where data collection can be done either online, Google form, o kaya by mail interviews. O kaya gumawa ka ng experimentation so that sa bahay ka na lang gumawa ng experimentation. In other words, you should be aware. Huwag kang mag-isip ng problema and then after you have already made the proposal, na-realize mo, hindi pala pwede. No, dapat proactive ka. Kaya nga, yung mga question always you ask is, kaya ko ba to? Do you have the skills to do the project? So you look at yourself. Do you have the resources to do the project? Are the data retrievable? Okay. If they have to be retrieved from from offices, will I be permitted access? Yung mga ganon. So don't think of this when you already have the problem. Think of all this while you are still looking or identifying your research problem. Ang iba naman, mabasa sang iban nga thesis, pagkatapos, parihas ni akon, hinuon ko nila, inon ko lang area, o inon ko lang ang subjects. You know, that's not how to choose topics. You have to consider all the possible limitations that you have. Kaya nga importante yung, do you know how to do it? Sometimes kasi, ang ganda ng topic, hindi ka pala marunong. So, maghahanap ka pa ng consultant, ma'am, anong gagawin ko? Ito ang gusto ko. Pag-aralan mo muna. So, that's one. kaya nga dito is I'm paying more attention sa pag-define. Now, once you have thought of a problem already, kasi sa title defense, pinapahanap kayo muna ng 3 choices, di ba? Now, analyze the situation kung talaga bang problema yung researchable. Importante kasi yung, is your research problem researchable? Is it viable? Mga ganon. Okay, here are some steps. You don't see this in books. It's only in my book that you will find this. These are really practical ways of identifying and defining a problem. First, identify and describe a problem situation. So anong situation ang gusto mong i-address? Magpili ka, 3 halimbawa. Okay, sabihin natin yung compliance with COVID protocols. Gusto mong pag-aralan yon. Okay. Kasi the next question is, bakit gusto mong pag-aralan yon? Kailangang i-justify mo. O halimbawa, gusto mo namang gender issues. So sasabihin mo, halimbawa, gusto mong pag-aralan kung ano yung mga qualifications, qualities, mga challenges ng isang babaeng executive, bank executive. Yun ang gusto ko. O kaya, matagal na itong gender and development, pero parang wala pa rin katutunan yung sinasabi nilang streamlining. O yun, halimbawa, ang gusto mo. Now, what I'm saying is, huwag kang magpili ng dami-dami. 3 lang muna. When you have now identified, the next question is, may problema ba talaga? Baka wala namang problema. So you have to identify and describe the problem situation. What is the situation? So you have here already some facts. Get facts, figures, na magsusupport ng existence of the problem. Does the problem really exist? So kung ang mga tanong mo bakit hindi nagbabayad ng utang yung mga pag-ibig loaners? O bakit hindi marunong magbayad ang Pilipino sa formal na utang pero mabilis silang magbayad sa mga Bombay? Yung mga ganon. So kung halimbawa, debts lang, yung mga utang lang ang gusto mo, you can explore. Again, depende sa major mo. O depende sa major mo. Okay, once you have identified the problem, you have presented facts and figures that it exists. It's not only that it exists, but it is a serious problem and it is widespread. Then the second thing that you do is, if this is the problem, ano bang dapat? O pwede ring unahin mo to ano ba yung ideal situation? At ano yung existing situation? Itong dalawa are very important. If you are experiencing a problem, pwedeng yung experiensya mo na problema ay walang solusyon. So, why will you pursue that? So, dapat may ara ka nga nabalaan nga posible nga solusyon. And that is the second part. This 1 and 2 can really be interchanged. So, you have a problem now, you describe the desired situation. So you have the what is and what should be. And then the third is, state what are the possible reasons for the discrepancy between what is and what should be. When we say, take note, it's not even possible, I would use the word plausible reasons. Meaning to say, kung meron kang problema ngayon, at meron kang perception on what should be, meaning anong dapat. And if you see a deviation or a discrepancy between what is and what should be, you can explore the possible reasons for the discrepancy between what is and what should be. At saan mo kukunin yan? Well, you can get it from review of related literature. You can get it from experience. You can get it from observation. So, itong tatlo are very important kasi itong tatlo ang magtuturo sa'yo. The third one will teach you what possible solutions or what possible answers you can research on in order to understand the discrepancy between the existing problem and the desired situation. All right. Now that you have already 1, 2, 3, the next question is, napag-aralan na ba to? So, let me give you an example. Actually, may example ko karon lang ang mga examples ta. So, when you hear, for example, that, you know, let me just focus first on compliance with health protocols. All right? Compliance with health protocols is very, very strictly, supposed to be strictly implemented to reduce spread of COVID. Diba? So, you are instructed, stay at home if there is nothing to do outside. If you are outside, wear your mask or wear your face shield. You practice social distancing. Do not go to crowded places. Pero very clear yan, kahit saan. Pinawagaywayan sa radyo, sa TV. But why is it that people do not care? Some people do not care, actually. So, ma-party pa, ma-video okay pa, makanto pa sa beach. So again, the question that you ask is, anong problema? Ano dapat? Dapat, ang number 2 mo is people should comply. Ngayon, gusto mong pag-aralan. Kasi alam nyo, we know naman some reasons, no? Sa iba don't care. Ang iba naman pasapayan. So, but wala sang research. Wala sang research to explain, to identify some of the reasons between the what is and what should be. Kaya walang masyadong solusyon. So, ang solusyon sa gobyerno, dakpon kag prisohon. May siling ang pag-gobyerno, multahan. So, are these really the solutions to the problem? Maybe yes, maybe no. So anyway, pag hindi solusyon, ang tanong mo pag-aaralan ko ba to? Would it be good for me to study it? And now you need to look into some related literature about what is known about the problem and what solutions have been tried and what were the results. So yun. So you see, if you will notice, sa chapter 1 ako, grabe ang tuto ko da. Kay once you have already identified your problem, that would now be easy for you to identify the unanswered questions. At yung mga unanswered questions mo, yun ang magiging basis mo to identify your research problem. Okay, I developed a matrix. No? Nag-develop ako ng matrix nito. These are not found in many books. The ones that I said in that slide, I summarized it here. For example, doon sa first question, what is the current situation? The instruction is describe the problem in terms of seriousness, extent, and scope. Present evidences that the problem exists. Saan ka kukuha ng ebidensya? Not in your observation, not from your perception, not from opinions, but you can get them from official statistics, records, or findings of related studies or literature. Ngayon, na-convince mo na ang sarili mo, may problema talaga. Ngayon, may problema nga. Ang tanong ko parati is, ano? So what? So you have to describe the desired situation. Without the problem, if the problem is solved, what will come up? Di ba mas maganda? Second, anong sabi ng Constitution? Anong sabi ng mga policies? Anong sabi ng mga rules? Anong mga memos? Sa CHED, for example, ano ba yung mga memo ng CHED? Now, if you see this column 1 and column 2 to be different, then you have a potential research problem. Take note, we want ethical papers and therefore you have always to provide references. Once nagawa mo na to, parang ito kasi, before I let my students write the narrative, pinapagawa ko sila nito. Okay, the third the third column that you have to prepare, ito na yung mga possible reasons. So identify the possible reasons for the discrepancy. Ano ba yung mga possible factors that contribute to the problem? Ano yung possible solutions to the problem that have been tried? Discuss the results. Anong diferensya ng mga researches na nagawa na? Anong kanilang mga limitasyon? Okay? Once you're finished with that, then you can go to the next step, which is describe the solutions already tried, success, and the results. Success ba or failure? Halimbawa, sabihin, matagal na nang alam ng gobyerno, nakaprograma na nga, si Talpulano nakagawa na ng proposal, etc., etc. Marami, but then, how was it? How was it? Okay? Anong diferensya ng mga interventions? Bakit hindi nag-successful? So you go to literature. Anong gagawin mo sa literature? You'll read literature that are related to the topic, then synthesize the result. Huwag mong copy-paste ha, kasi plagiarism yan. So you synthesize the result, present the common findings, but also present the conflicting findings. Ngayon, para ma-justify mo ang research, you have to identify the limitations of the study. O bakit gusto mong gawin ito uli? Ay kasi ma'am, ang coverage no napaka-limited. Isang barangay lang. Ay ako, I want to cover the whole province. Yung mga variables, ma'am, 3 variables lang ang pinag-aralan nila. I think there are more variables that can be studied. Ma'am, yung area of coverage, iba. Upland yung previous study. Ngayon, I want to look into the lowland. Population, lalaki yung pinag-aralan nila, dapat integrated, male and female. Ma'am, yung methodology nila medyo mali-mali. O kaya may diferensya. So, if you see the literature, even if the study has already been conducted, if there are limitations of the study, which you think can be addressed in your proposed study, then you can still continue and do that same topic. So after that, then you ask these questions. Kung ganito, ano yung mga posible kong, what are the things that I need to answer again? Mayroon pa bang ibang tanong na pwedeng sagutin? So, some of the questions that you will probably want to ask yourself is this. Ano ba yung current status ngayon ng population? Yung huling nagawa na study 2000 pa, that is already 21 years ago. Iba na naman ba ngayon? Okay. Pwede rin gamitin mong, the available related literature were baseline studies. Wala pang after the project study. So what characteristics of the problem and the population are not yet reported in previous studies? What factors possibly contribute to current problem not yet adequately identified and explained? What research process need to be changed, modified, or improved? Itong dalawang templates are very good guides in identifying or streamlining a possible research problem. So another way of analyzing a problem is like this. You can also analyze the problem by using a paradigm. For example, yung poor study habits of students, what factors contribute to their poor study habits? Siyempre, yung first question, ano ba ang problema? So ang problema is students have poor study habits. Anong ibig mong sabihin? They spend so little time in reading their books, in reading their modules. O napaka-irregular yung kanilang study practices. Or some do not even study at all. So problema yan. So you go to the next question, which is, ano dapat? Diba? Yung ano dapat sa second column is, dapat may regular study period sila. Dapat may lugar silang where they can really concentrate, etc. So meron ka ng dalawang sitwasyon, ano yung problema, ano yung dapat. So ano ang possible reasons for that? So, I have here identified. Actually, marami pa yan. So, ito kasi, mga kwan mo lang, possible reasons nga. O baka low income ang family, wala silang lugar. Limited education ang parents, so the parents don't care whether the students study or not. O baka wala silang mga libro, wala silang load, no materials, lack of facilities. Added to that, posible ding, here you are. Posible ding wala silang interest, no? No interest towards the subject, wala silang motivation. So these are what you call, hindi pa ito yung problema. Ito pa yung grinding palang. Kasi alam mo, sa research, dito you spend the most of your time sa chapter 1. Chapter 1 kasi is a justification, and if you cannot justify your problem, it will be very difficult for you to do your research. Okay? So ayan na, meron ka ng problema. Kumbinsido ka ba na meron ka ng possible research problem? Do that for 3 topics. Do that for 3 topics. Actually, I have here 4 na examples, kaya lang because I'm running out of time, kailangang paspas tayo nito. Okay. Then we go now to the general types of research. We have the descriptive research, the relational correlational research, the experimental research, and we have other types, by the way. Now we have the qualitative research. Marami pa yan, but ito yung general types. The descriptive research aims to describe the characteristic of a group of people or objects or an existing condition. The researcher, this is researcher, observes, counts, classifies, describes, compares, narrates. Ito lang ginagawa. Hindi ka nagko-connect ng mga variables. Simply nagbibilang ka lang o kaya ay nag-observe. Yung ikalawa naman is the relational correlational research that aims to explain the connection between a problem, which is the assumed effect, which we also call the dependent variable, and selected factors, which are the assumed causes and assumed causes of the problem. So, yan, kailangan meron kang dalawang set. Sorry for the wrong spelling. Mayroon kang dalawang set of variables. Yung isang set, yun ang problema na na-describe mo na. And then yung isang set naman, yun ang assumed cause of the problem. So yung assumed cause of the problem, kung titingnan mo itong matrix nga tong before that, meron tayong ito, yung parang direct na ina-assume mo na nagkukos ng problema. At meron ka rin, kung minsan nga, marami pang kahon-kahon yan. Kasi ito, we have what we call the intervening variables, the moderator variables, the facilitating variables. Marami pa yan. So you can have as many boxes in your framework. But you know that when you analyze those, it's always really a bivariate. Like ito, you correlate this with that. Ito, you correlate this with that. And this, you correlate this with that. Or you can correlate this with this and control for attitude. So marami yan. But you really are only talking about a bivariate analysis unless you want to do a regression model. Okay. Examples of descriptive studies. Examples, no? Profile of dropouts. Isang study yan. Characteristics of slow learners. Isang study yan. Experiences of children of single parents. Isang study yan. Coping responses of single fathers. Isang study yan. So in other words, doon lang sa profiling. Do not apologize because descriptive lang ang study mo. Depende sa objectives mo, depende sa methodology mo. Kasi, halimbawa, when you're talking about problems and experiences of children of single parents, pwedeng gumawa ka ng malaking study niyan. Yung isang study is simply description of their characteristics, and the second one are narratives of yung kanilang specific problems. So kahit wala kang statistical analysis, kung maganda yung qualitative aspect dyan at gumawa ka ng what you call this mixed method research, pwede na rin yan. Here's another example. Challenges and coping strategies of single mothers, of self-quarantined students. So these are two topics that you can look into. Then you have management practices and challenges of female school administrators. Kung MBA ka, challenges of female bank executives. O kaya small and medium scale business operators. Ang dami management practices ka lang. Iba-iba yung mga topics kung sino yung subjects mo. Here's another one about COVID. Lived experiences of COVID-positive individuals in isolation. Marami tayong mga naririnig na problema na isolation is putting a lot of psychological and emotional pressure sa mga naka-isolate. Imagine, ma-isolate ka ng 14 days, wala kang kasama, ikaw lang sa isang room. That's, that's heavy. Another one, mental health status of online learners and teachers. Marami ng studies nito, but sa Pilipinas, kukunti pa. Study habits of senior high school students. This is another issue that we can do research on. Kasi itong mga senior high school students natin, 5 years ago, mga college na sila. And when they are college students, medyo ang demand is greater. So I don't know what's happening now. Kung anong mga problema ng mga senior high students. Marami din silang problema dyan sa behavioral problems. Marami din. Now, ito naman are examples of correlation research. Take note, we now have boxes. Okay? Association between selected factors, stress level, and coping responses of online teachers. Galing yan doon sa descriptive. Kanina, walang correlation. Parang description lang nitong tatlo. Okay? Ngayon, to be able to use this as a thesis or a doctoral research, kailangan you have to use a higher level of analysis. So, imbis na description ka lang, you can now go into correlation study. You can increase, for example, the factors here. You can introduce stress level as the independent variable and coping strategies as your dependent. So itong dalawa, pwede ng study yan. Pero magpipresent ka pa ng isang set which will be your moderator variables o kaya your antecedent variables. And then here's another one which is really bivariate lang. Correlation between undergrad academic background and board exam results. Type of school, course, major, general average. Take note, saan ba ito nanggagaling? Saan ba ito nanggagaling? Backtrack ka a little bit doon sa columns natin ginagawa. Ano yung possible reasons for the problem? So, hindi ito palagpat ha. Hindi ito palagpat. Kailangang meron kang basis galing dito. Oo, galing dito kanina. So, your problem there should come from your analysis of the situation. Don't immediately go to your problem and sabihin mo, ma'am, I want to study, what you call this? I want to study coping responses of mothers. Di, ma'am, ano ang nami? Nga independent variable. Di, ma'am, anong, I hear students doing like that. Ma'am, gusto ko coping mechanism. I have read Lazarus' book and I want to find out kung paano nag-cope ang isang problema ang mga nanay, paano nag-cope. Kadamo na. And then mangkutunin nila ini, which is wrong. Dapat dito pa lang, you are just thinking of the problem. You are already analyzing what could have been your identified possible reasons. So that when you are already putting them into a paradigm, you know already what should be there. You know already what should be there. Halimbawa, Anong labot sang type of school? Anong tapot sang kurso? Anong labot sang measure? To board exam results. Again, hindi man ipalagpat, ha? These are not palagpatation. You have a basis for understanding or for identifying the possible factors that can contribute to a problem. Kasi the first thing that you do is inianay ang imo describe mo, ano ba ang problema? Hindi anay pagpanumduman niyo, di anay magpangupya sa ibang nga thesis. So think first of the problem. Okay, once you have done this, once you have done that, okay, here's another one. Kundi usually mga bivariate lang kita. Oh. Let's look at this topic. Extent of exposure to social media, level of knowledge about COVID, and compliance with health protocol. Anong problema di? Compliance with health protocol. Nga aayhan, nga wala sila ga-comply. Kay base, wala man sila kabalo kung paano kag nga. So you have here level of knowledge about COVID. And then, tinga ang hindi sila kabalo. Ay, wala man abi sila ma'am ga-abri TV, wala man sila nag-abri Facebook, wala man sila So, you have, again, diin ini naghalin. Dito man gihapon naghalin sa aton column analysis. No? So, here, you identify ano ang ila function. So, compliance is the problem. The possible reason for the problem is poor knowledge. Another reason for poor knowledge is kulang sila sa exposure. So this now becomes a complete research topic already. Okay. There's another topic. Father's involvement in their learning activities. Actually, this study has been conducted already before. Ang academic performance sa mga estudyante na wala gid na nagakadula sa problem sa maestra. May malagpok sa graduate school gani. Sa graduate school gani may nagakalagpok pa katapos I just finished checking the comprehensive examination sa pila pulo ka estudyante daw 4 ang failure sa research lang. So wala subong halimbawa online learning. Nga akadamo nga mga estudyante hindi ka pasar. Is it because wala ang mga ginikanan, wala gabulig sa ila? Ang may-ari pa ni, nga hindi makabulig ang tatay, ikay nagapangita obra, wala kapamahaw, etc., wala edukasyon. So many. So ini mga variables nga ni should already be in your brain.
Dr. David, excuse me, Dr. David.
Yes.
My apologies for the interruption. Some of our audience are requesting if you could use Tagalog or English because they cannot understand Ilonggo, some of the attendees.
Araw. O sige.
Thank you, Doc.
I'll just speak everything in English, okay?
Thank you, Doc.
Okay. Another thing, question ko is, para hindi natin ito, we might not be able to finish this because anong inyo? How shall we stop at 3:30?
No, Doc. Continue, Doc.
Kasi we started late eh. We started late. Okay, what I will do is I will send you a copy of this PowerPoint. So I'll send this to Secretariat. The Secretariat can freely distribute this without pay. So you can have, these are 69 slides, by the way. So we might end, mag-end tayo alas 4 or alas 4:30. Okay ba?
Yes, Doc. Mas maganda kasi, Doc, yung na-explain mo, Doc. Medyo maganda yung learning.
Kasi pwede rin itong basahin ko lang itong PowerPoint na to eh. You know, I spent 2 days preparing this. Okay? So once you have already your independent and dependent variables, take no ano yung itsura natin. First, you have the problem. Then you have the possible solution. That's when you now conceptualize that. Ano yung problema? Poor study habits. Ano yung possible solution? Palitan yung teaching method. Then go down. Ano ba yung problema sa ating poor study habits, oras, at regularity? Ano yung teaching method na pwede mong gamitin, aywan ko, titingnan mo na lang muna. What you will do is, first, find out what teaching method could be, what could be used. No? If you have a good teaching method, you can compare it with a traditional teaching method and find out which method will be applicable. Okay, then you now have formulation. Once meron ka, you have already your research objectives, and not yet. You already have your problem. You sit down from that. If you will notice, your objectives and hypothesis, galing yan doon sa ginawa mo. Maybe this will really be, siguro, you need about a day or two just to think about this. Okay. What are research objectives? They are statements of what the researcher intends or plans to do or wants to do. We have two types of objectives. You have the general and the specific objectives. The general objective states in behavioral terms. Take note, in behavioral terms. Who or what will be studied, who will study it, when will it be done, or where will it be done. Itong dalawa are just really optional. Kung minsan kasi, you don't have to state in what school or kailan mo gagawin. So, but the first two are very important. Okay, now let me talk about behavioral terms. No? You may, by the way, use declarative sentence or questions if you want. It is important to know that declarative sentence are objectives and questions are also objectives, depending on how you state it, or they just call it problem statement. Look at this one. Sandali. Okay. What are we saying about declarative? So the declarative objective starts with to determine, to find out, take note, determine, behavioral yan, to find out, to describe, to compare, to test, to design, to evaluate, to analyze. But never use the word to know. To know is not measurable. To understand is not also measurable. Kasi you cannot measure understanding or knowing unless qualitative, and then you explain that later on. So example, the study will be conducted to determine the characteristics of street children. Okay, by the way, this is another topic na ang gandang pag-aralan. It's very, I'm excited. Being a sociologist, this is another topic. Another objective, to compare the activities engaged in by male and those by female children. That's psychology. Another example, determine if there is a significant relationship between household size and number of activities engaged in by children. So you will note, determine, compare, determine, these are all behavioral. Specific objective, so yun ang general objective, ha? Who, what, when, how. Then, specific objectives are sub-objectives or small particles of general objectives. They are identified in the specific objectives. The variables are expressed in measurable terms. This suggests the type of analysis used. I'll focus later on sa examples. So here is an example, another example, topic, relationship between teaching doing and academic performance of grade 6 pupils in private and public elementary school. Maybe not anymore TV viewing, pwede mo na, you can already change TV viewing with computer games. O kaya computer shows, no? We can apply that. Then general objective, the study will be conducted if there is a significant relationship between TV viewing and academic performance. Take note, yung general objective is a reflection of the title. It's a reflection of the title. Ngayon, where are the specifics? The specifics, take note that when you see, for example, TV viewing, it's very abstract. Okay, it's an abstract thing. So what you do in the specific objectives is you put measurable measures of your independent variable. So ito yung TV viewing mo sa specific objective. Sasabihin mo na you want to study pupils' frequency of viewing television. Sa general objective, TV viewing lang. Sa specific objective, you specified already kung ano yung TV viewing. Ito yung frequency of viewing and amount of time spent in the spent time in viewing television. Okay. So where am I? All right. So specifically, the study aims to determine if there is a significant relationship between amount of time pupils spend in TV viewing and the amount of time they spend in studying. So you are now kasi correlating TV viewing and study habits. So here, specific objectives specify the minute variables, the particles of the general objective. So, ito na yung refer to your title and variables in formulating your objectives and hypotheses. So, association between selected factors, stress level, and coping responses. So, ito na yung mga variables mo. And yan, that is a repetition of what I said a while ago. Because yan, this is what we will use now as our basis for formulating our objectives. Ngayon, I have a very easy way to let you make sure that your objectives are attuned to your titles and your variables. So ulitin natin yung selected factors, stress level, and coping responses of online teachers in a public school. Anong ating factors kanina? Length of service, grade level taught, size of class. And then we have stress level, and then we have coping responses. How do you formulate your objectives? Dito lang, you just look at this. Okay, so ito yung, the study aims to determine the relationship between selected factors, stress level, and coping responses. That's the general objectives. Ngayon, how will you formulate your specific objectives? Ayaw kasi nating may maiwan tayo. So ito ay numbered, ninumberan ko yan. Looking at this paradigm, number 1 is your objective number 1. So, to describe the teachers in terms of their length of service, their grade level taught, and size of class. Okay, that's objective number 1. Objective number 2, ito yung objective number 2, to determine the teacher's level of stress. You can add in terms of blank, blank, blank. No? Pwedeng dagdagan yan because there are instruments that already specify ano yung sources of level of stress. Okay? Objective number 3, to determine the coping responses of the teachers. So you have already 3 objectives. Itong tawag dito yung mga descriptive objectives. Ngayon, dahil relational tayo, titing natin, we will see what relationships we are going to test. So ito yung R1. So ito yung dapat na objective for mo. To determine if there is a relationship between length of service and stress level, grade level taught and stress level, size of class and stress level. So you see, madali. Hindi ka mawawala. You will not be tempted to add something that you don't need. Okay, number 5. Ito na yung number 5 natin. All right? To determine if there is a relationship between length of service and coping responses, grade level taught and coping responses, size of class and coping responses. Okay? Gets nyo? No question yet? And then the next is objective number 6. to determine the relation, if there is a relationship between stress level and coping responses. And then you can add another, number 7, if you want to use partial correlation, you can say to determine the relationship between selected factors and coping responses when stress level is controlled. So that's the 7th. Pero dito, I'm just using the bivariate analysis. Okay, how many of you have done the formulation or objectives using this strategy? All right, nobody is answering. Okay, so a hypothesis is an educated guess or a tentative answer to a question. Kailangan the hypothesis must always be connected to the objectives. It is a statement about an expected relationship between 2 or more variables that can be empirically tested. It is usually tested in intervention or experimental studies and in comparative and correlation studies. By the way, yung mga descriptive plain or strictly descriptive studies they have no hypothesis kasi there's nothing to test. All right, a hypothesis may state that an independent variable is associated with a dependent variable. For example, there is a significant association between level of knowledge about the dangers of smoking and smoking habits of young professionals. Or there is a relationship between parents' extent of participation in school activities of their children is significantly related to their children's school performance. But I'll show you this table again. You will notice ang hilig kong mag-table. Alright? So dapat, ito yung mga relational hypotheses that should synchronize with your objectives. So for number 1, to determine if there is significant relationship between length of service and stress level, grade level taught, size of class, etc. Look, anong ginagawa ko? I just copy-paste this dito. Copy-paste lang to para hindi ka mawala. Copy-paste this with that, then erase to determine if. Okay, to determine if. And then you have, there is a significant relationship between, and if you want to state it in the null form, you simply insert no. But for me, statisticians would say always use the null form. There are cases when there's no need to really state the null because you know there is a relationship, but you only want to know the extent of relationship. Okay? The 4th is to determine if there is a significant relationship between length of service, grade level, size in class, and coping responses. Again, copy-paste, erase to determine if. And then you have the null hypothesis, erase the no, and you have the alternative hypothesis, etc., etc. Na ngayon ang tanong, the question is, ma'am, do we have to place both the null and the alternative hypothesis? It depends upon the school. Okay? Some schools require both hypotheses. In our school, where I teach and I used to teach, we simply write either the null or the alternative. If you want the alternative, go. If you want the null hypothesis, go. But if you are taking statistics na subject, they would require you the null hypothesis. So kung titingnan mo, if you look at this, for example, it's very clear kung what you want based on the title, what you want based on the objectives, what you want based on the variables that you have analyzed. Then after you have given now your theoretical and conceptual, your objectives and hypotheses, you can now go to theoretical. This will be fast. Mahirap kasi itong explain. A theoretical framework is a statement or elaboration of the theoretical basis of the research problem. It includes a theory that explains why certain factors affect or contribute to or possibly cause a problem. It also explains a theoretical proposition in relation to the problem being studied. Isa lang, I have only one example for this. The concepts used in a theoretical framework are abstract. They are usually abstract and expressed in general terms. They are expressed in concrete terms once your variables are identified. For example, in a study, the relationship between knowledge about COVID, attitudes and compliance, protocols, knowledge, attitude, and behavior. Knowledge and behavior are abstract concepts. The knowledge, attitude, practice theory is a behavior change theory proposed by Western scholars, in which the changes of human behavior are divided into three successive processes: the acquisition of knowledge, the generation of attitudes, and the formation of behavior. Ito yung theory. Ito yung theory. Now, you use this and you explain this, how these three can be connected. So, for example, you can say that a person who does not know anything cannot develop a good attitude. Or how can you practice something that you don't know about? Yun ang elaboration. But when you convert this already to a conceptual paradigm, you now explain the possible connection between the independent and dependent variables. And you translate the abstract concepts in the theoretical framework into concrete and measured variables, which means to say, balik tayo dito, so you can say now that a person's knowledge about COVID will affect whether he is in favor or not in favor with COVID protocols. A person who has a favorable attitude will more likely practice than someone who has negative attitude. That is what you call conceptual framework. So come again, we have the title, we have the variables which are abstract. You look for a theory that will explain the possible connection. Then you elaborate on this, and then you come up with the matrix na, or the paradigm that explains that. So it looks like it's easy, but actually it's not. What theory is your study anchored on? So magpili ka. Will you use behaviorism theory? You look for it in the internet. There are many of these. We have the cognitive theory, the exchange theory, knowledge attitude theory, motivation theory, social learning theory. And in the framework, you explain how the theory or theories possibly explain the connection between the problem, which is the dependent variable, and the assumed causes of the problem, which are the independent variable, and intervening or moderator variable, if there is any. Then you elaborate how the variables can possibly be connected. Okay, so ito na. Then after that, you put na your schematic diagram. So ilagay mo dito yung lahat na variables which you assumed as the cause, and then dito yung problem or your assumed effect. Okay? Then after that is the operational definition. I think you know what this is all about. Operational definition is a description of a variable in terms of how it is used in the study and how it is going to be measured. The operational definition serves as basis in identifying or formulating the research instrument. Example, influence of knowledge and attitude towards respiratory illness on smoking practices of senior high school students. Alam mo, problema ito ngayon. Mga babae na ngayon naninigarilyo. Ang mga lalaki, they smoke even at a very young age. Anyway, the question is, does educational attainment affect? Does it, bakit COVID ba ako? Knowledge about smoking, I'm sorry. This is knowledge about effect of smoking. Okay, now how do you operationalize? Ito kasing operational definition will be your basis in preparing your instruments. Okay, what is the meaning of educational attainment in your study? Take note, in your study, the meaning is the highest grade or year level completed by the respondents, whether in the elementary, high school, okay, wala na da, college. Meaning of this is, it could be, some definitions would simply say the number of years in school. What do you mean by knowledge? A person's understanding about COVID, its transmission, prevention, and treatment, and determined by a 15-item questionnaire about the disease. The number of correct answers will be the measure of knowledge. Tingnan nyo ha. Tingnan nyo, it's an operational definition. So ito, by the way, I'm sorry, hindi ko napalitan. I was not able to change the title. In a hurry kasi ako eh. Then attitudes towards smoking, whether the person is in favor or not in favor of smoking. And smoking practices, number of cigarettes consumed in one day. So itong operational definition will give you an idea on how to measure or how to generate the information in your instrument. Okay? Babalikan natin yan if we have time later on because I want to give you materials on how to prepare the instruments. Kasi here we still have to tackle. After that, this one will be only in passing. I'll not discuss this very detailed. The choice of a design depends on the objective of study and available resources. Are non-experimental designs. They are good for descriptive and correlational studies. Then we have such as the survey design, the pre-experimental designs, and the qualitative research designs. Mga non-experimental yan. And then we also have case studies. Then we go to experimental and quasi-experimental designs are used in studies intended to establish cause and effect, impact of an intervention, treatment, designing and developing and evaluating of a device or a strategy. There are several types of experimental designs, by the way, but the three most common designs in social science and in education are pre-test, post-test control group design, post-test only control group design, four-group Solomon design. Meron pa tayong pre-experimental, but they are not considered as experimental design. Like post-test only design, walang control. Basta experimental, meron tayong control group. So itong Solomon design, may control group to. Now, titingnan mo ang quasi-experimental, yung pre-test, post-test, parang pre-test, post-test control group design, except that the quasi-experimental design has no randomization. Kaya nga ang tawag dito is non-equivalent group design. I'd like you to look for a book that, kasi ito naman is very easy eh. Pag sinabing, oh, my objectives are this like that. Gagawin ko dyan experimentation. Di tulad ng problem identification and justification, it really needs a lot of thinking. In this case, these are usually recommended or prescribed. So I don't like to spend so much time on the designs. Now, I'll go to sampling. Ngayon kasi sa designs, once you have experimental, you should adapt randomization. If you have some qualitative study, it's okay to use non-probability sampling. So, ano yung sinasabi nating sampling? Sampling is the process of choosing a representative elements or portion of a population that will represent the entire population. Opposite to sampling is total enumeration or census, which study all the elements in the population. Now, you have to understand some concepts in sampling. Una, anong sinasabi nating population element? A population element, it could be an item, it could be an object, an area, or an individual on which or from which data will be taken. When you say target population, it is the total population, total yan total population, from which representative information is desired. So from the total target, from the target population, we derive the sampling population, which is the population from which a sample is actually drawn. Sampling frame is a list of elements from which the sampling is drawn. It is a list, like a class record, a barangay document, a register list, that we call that as sampling. Now, these two types, basic types of sampling is non-probability and probability. I think you know what is meant by this. Ito yung non-probability, ito yung purposive sampling. You just intentionally select your respondents. So it cannot be used as a basis for making a generalization for a given population. Ito lang ang pwedeng gamitin mo in order for you to make a generalization to the population. So probability sampling based on the concept of random selection is a procedure that assures equal chance for all members of the population to be selected as a sample. So if you are 100 and you need 50, and you will give each one a chance of being selected, you will have to use probability sampling. Now, types of probability sampling. First one is simple random sampling, which is the selection of sample cases or subset of sample cases from a population, giving all the sampling units equal chances of being included as a sample. It may be done by drawing of lots or the use of table of random digits, and now by using the computer's random selection process. Okay? Now, I will not detail on the draw lots. You know how to draw lots, right? All right. The second type is systematic sampling with a random start. Systematic sampling with a random start is a method of selecting a sample from a population by taking the kth units from an ordered population from the first unit, which is selected at random. I am sure you have heard about this. You have a list, you need 100 for you have 100 and you need, for example, 50. You get the random start, and from the random start, say your random start is 20. You start at number 20, 50, 100 divided by 50 is 2, so you draw every second in the list. By the way, all these processes are detailed in my book. So if you have any chance of buying the book, although I'm not sure if they still have stocks. So it's like this. All right, you list the total eligible elements in a particular order, let's say alphabetical, and number them from 1 to n, let's say 65, if you have 65. Determine the sampling interval by dividing the size of the population by the number of units desired. So have 65 divided by 30 equals 2. From a random start, draw the desired number of sample every second until all the desired sample have been drawn. Steps lang na, so you can have that listed. You don't need too much elaboration or discussion. Then you have your
Dun sa pagpili Dok ng random start, pwede lang yun mini mo na lang.
Well, depende sa mini mo. But it should really be random. Halimbawa, ang gagawin ko, somebody passes by and says, he want to 65, di ba? at kailangan mo 30. Sabihin ko lang, will you please give me a number from 1 to 65? Mini mo yan, but that's randomization. That's okay. You can even close your eyes and simply pinpoint a pen from 1 to 65, and wherever your pen drops, yun ang random start mo. Basta hindi lang conscious. It's not a conscious selection. It should be a random selection. You can even just, open the computer and you say, give me a random start, and the computer will give you number 1. So you start with number 1. If a friend tells you number 5, you start with number 5. As long as there's no conscious selection of the random start.
Doc, can we say na random sampling siya? If example, Doc, yung sa survey, kasi uso ngayon ng survey, Doc, na di ba, sa G-forms. Tapos may mga group chats kayo, Doc. Tapos pinagpo-post mo dun sa group chats. Tapos kailangan mo lang kunyari ng 100 participants. Yung first 100 sa group chats na sumali sa study, pwede na ba yun, Doc, na masabi, maklasify natin nga random sampling ba?
Random. That is what you call accidental sampling. Or it's like wanting to know, for example, the sexual behavior of students, and sasabihin mo, okay, there are 1,000 students in CPU. So the first 100 student that enters the university will be my sample. You see, hindi yan random. Kasi you are already depriving those who did not come early to join, to be selected as a sample. The same thing when you are using Google Form. When you say the first 100 that responds to it will be my sample. Ang tanong kasi sa randomization is, do they represent the total population? Hindi. They don't. But you can say, for example, that this study is an information generated from people who are familiar with Google Forms, and the first. So yun lang, you can do the study, but then your generalization will only be for the people who have entered the first 100 that enter that. But you are limited in your generalization and conclusion.
Doc, paano pag kunyari 5% ng population naman ang sumali, pero sa nga siya? Kunyari, ang aim mo ay 5% ng population.
1%. Okay. Ganito, ang gagawin mo, guys, do not say the first 100. So you can estimate, you can come up with an estimate in 5 days how many people usually open the internet. And if you have a 5% and you say, for example, you have 1,000 people opening the internet, what is 5% of 1,000? Okay, so that is 50. Ngayon, how will you get the 50? Will you get the first 50? No, you'll not get the first 50. So if 1,000 divided by 50 is how much? So, ang yung gagawin, if you use, for example, systematic sampling with a random start, and your random start is 2, and your interval, take note, you'll have to compute for the interval. And the interval is 20, halimbawa. So you get the number 2 na pumasok, and then you count 20, and the 20th from number 2 will be your second sample. Then your third is the next 20th, fourth, and so on and so forth. It will take time, but that is how it is.
Doc, paano yung kasi to kunyari yung sa group chat, Doc, kunyari ang population nyo sa office ay 1,000. Tapos 5% nung population mo sa office para makagamit ka ng inferential stat. 5% sana nung 1,000 sa 1,000 employee, which is dun sa group chat lang na Google Form ang magsasali ba? Parang 5% ng 1,000, yun sana yung magiging yung magiging sample. So kumbaga, ang nag-respond lang sa G-form mo ay kunyari 500. Tapos from 500, doon ka kukuha ng 5% mo para masabi mo na 5% sa population mo ang sumali? Paano yun?
So kung 1,000 ang total population mo, yung 500 may not be sufficient. Okay? Ngayon, kung wala, halimbawa, 500 lang ang nag-respond. Okay? And then, pwede mong gawin nun, basta isulat mo ano yung mga limitation mo. And then when you state the limitation, kasi dapat klaro ang limitation mo, para yung inferential statistics mo, pwede mo ring sabihin, okay, my inferential statistics will only be generalized, the result of my inferential statistics will only be generalized to the 500, but not to the 1,000. Kuha mo? Kasi 5% of 1,000 is how many?
Good afternoon, Doc. Can I raise a question po?
Yes, sure. Ay, yung tanong na-raise mo na ba yun? Nasagot ko na ba yun? If you want another who may not have...
Para kasing ano siya, Dok, eh. O yung employee 1,000 nga lang ang respond dito sa nag-respond sa research mo, Dok, 500 lang. Pero sa 5% sampling mo sana na ini-aim, more than enough na ang 500, Dok. Karon murag mo pili na lang ka dito sa 500 og 5% para kumbaga 5% sa 1,000 para maging respondent.
Yeah, ang sabi ko nga, kasi I want to entertain another question ha. Kasi in your case, hindi ka talaga, you can make a generalization. We can only make a generalization. If you want to ask me further question, you can probably get my address kay Walter.
Excuse me, Doc. Doc.
Next question, please.
I'm Joel Mahilog, Doc, from Davao City. So actually, Doc, I was alarmed. I was na-interest ako sa question na raised by a while ago, Doc. Actually, I posted my question on the chat box. Kasi suppose kasi common problems we encounter, Doc, in conducting research nowadays is the turnout of the respondents. The response of the respondents. So kunyari, Doc, yung nasabi ni Ma'am na 1,000 yung expected mo na i-survey. Tapos makakuha lang ang mag-respond lang sa let's say 500. Pwede ba na kunin na lang natin lahat doon as part of the respondents na i-treat natin statistically yung mga responses nila? Hindi na tayo magsa-sampling pa out of those 500? Kasi kapag meron din ako na follow-up question po kasi I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, na sabi ng mga statistics na the more respondents, the better. Is it correct po? Thank you so much, Doc, and for the time.
That's wrong. It's not wrong, but it's not necessarily correct.
Hello, ma'am.
Kasi depende, kahit small ang population mo, as long as you computed your sample size using scientific formula. That's one. You draw your samples using the scientific process. Ngayon, doon sa sinasabi niyong 1,000 ang total population mo, 500 ang sumagot. Kasi you sent everyone a copy of the 500 of the 1,000. And 500 lang yung sumagot. Meron kang gumawa ka ng assumption na yung kanilang response is also random. Meaning to say, hindi mo pinili na sila yung sasagot. So, pag gumawa ka na ng marginal table, for example, at gumawa ka ng parang normal curve, baka you will find out na mag-skewed yun towards the highly educated or the least educated. So, hindi na representative yun. Diba? Now, you can even, kasi malaki na rin yung malaki na rin yung 500 sa 1,000. Kasi if you have 1,000 population, ang kakailanganin mo lang dyan ay mga 250 na samples. Given a level of 5%, 95%, and a sampling error of also about 5%. Mataas na yung 500.
Yes, Doc.
Mataas na yung 500. So, in that case, hindi talaga correct yung sabihin mong mas mataas, mas reliable. Hindi mas reliable nga kung medyo kaunti, basta lang according to the scientific process. Ngayon, kung ako, ang magagawa ko niyan, okay, take the 500, and then from the 500, you draw lots, or you randomly choose the needed samples. Or what you can do is come up with marginals and find out kung may normal curve ka. Pag mag-normal curve ka, yung mga mga parang stray, huwag mo nang isali. You know what I mean? Pwede mong kunin.
Oo, Dok. Ang problema, Dok, kasi kunyari, Dok, di ba ang kailangan ko lang talaga na sample 250, tas 500 yung sumali, Dok. So pwede kong i-draw lots na lang doon from 500 yung 250, Dok. Pero yung magiging inferential ko, parang yung magiging description ko sa last ay parang ito yung 250 na sample sa sumali na 500 from the representative ng ng 1,000 population. Pwede bang maging ganun ang kalabasan niya, Dok? Like yung 250 random is
sa 500 lang ka talaga. Pero ang maganda dyan, para maging yung distribution mo naman maganda, stratified mo, wag kang mag-simple random something. Stratified. Oo. That will be the next thing that I will talk about. Yung isa stratify mo.
Kumbaga, Dok, hindi talaga ako, pag gano'n na scheme, Dok, hindi talaga ako makakapag-generalize na yung 250 na pinili ko ay representative ng 1,000. Representative lang talaga siya ng 500.
Yes.
Okay, Dok. Kasi ang common problem karon, Dok, sa Google Form, dili jud tanan, Dok, mo appeal ba? So, kumbaga, katulang naganahan or willing mag-participate o naitay, mag-participate even though mga kaubanin mo sa trabaho.
Makes your study bias already.
Yes.
But anyway,
ask
a statistician
Hello.
Kung ano ang magagawa. Any more question? Oh, by the way, you can contact me after this kasi alas 4:30 na.
Dok, mangayo mi, Dok. Mangayo mi, Dok, number. O email, Dok.
Any what you call this?
Hello po.
Any questions? Some more questions.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
I would like to add, I would like to clarify lang doon sa pinag-uusapan ninyo about the sampling. I think ang concern niya is how to reflect sa discussion niya yung response rate. Out of 1,000 na target niya, 500 ang nag-response, pero ang kailangan niya na samples ay say for example 250 lang, wala namang problema doon. Actually, sa sampling, sa samples na kailangan, yung 250 is not an assurance, depende yon. Pero using SPSS, kung nagagamit kayo, mayroon na dyang test na magagamit kung makita ninyo kung yung inyong sample is sufficient enough, the QMO ba? So, pwede nilang i-test yun. So, hindi na masyadong issue na yun na para
actually,
sa
kung kunyari na 5% akong kinahanglan, 250 lang jud. Kaso ang pag-assure ba nga sa 1,000 ang good, dili kaayo kung maka-assure nga random jud ang mo appeal kay katulang laging kunyari 15 day.
Miss, random na nga yung nagsagot ng Google Form. May randomization na doon, automatic na yun. So, kung nag-randomize ka sa 500, ang issue lang doon, mention mo lang sa discussion mo na ang response rate lang is 500 over 1,000, parang ganun.
Oo, at saka
mo.
Yung sinasabi,
lagi,
excuse me, yung mga sinasabi yung DSPSS can tell you whether your population is enough.
Sufficient.
No.
Yes, Doc, it's sufficient naman.
No, I don't know how you do that, but usually ang dapat i-encode mo sa SPSS ay yung number na na-determine mo na is as sufficient. Wag yung ilalagay mo lahat sila kasi pag nag-generate siya ng sufficiency, numero lang yun eh. It's only the number. Like say, pag naglagay ka ng 500 at sasabihin ng computer na, okay, you only need 250. Yun na ang masasabi niya. Hindi niya masasabi na yung 250 na i-generate mo are really, truly randomized. So, ang limitasyon natin is, kasi sa research, it's a matter of stating in your report kung ano yung mga limitation mo. And then you have also to state your limitations even in your discussion of results. Do not pretend that you are presenting findings that can be generalized to the 1,000 when in fact, hindi naman talaga kasi yung madi-generalize mo lang yun doon sa 500 na nakuha mo, and especially when you randomly select your needed samples from the 500 that got in. So kung halimbawa, pwede mong 500 ang pumasok, doon ka sa 500. Kaya nga sabi ko gumawa muna kayo ng tentative presentation. Ang marginals ba? I-marginals mo muna yung 500. Yung 500 ba, normal ba ang distribution nyo o baka skewed lang? Skewed naman. Kasi pag nag-skewed yung distribution niya towards a particular characteristic, then you're not anymore generalizing to a population that is diverse. Diba? Kaya nga, kailangan pag nag-resample ka out of the 500 that came in, pwede mong gamitan ng stratified sampling. Okay, ipapasok ko muna ang what I mean by stratified. Ito yung stratified sampling kasi. Sometimes there are populations that have homogeneous groupings. May mga subgroups. You know what I mean?
Yes, Doc. Yes, Doc. May mga subgroups, Doc.
Okay. Halimbawa, kasi pag ang nagsagot, halimbawa, puro babae. O meron ka ng bias, may gender bias ka na. Diba? Pag may Google form, isang population, napakarami, yung isang population, konti. When you know, in general, na ang population mo ay hindi naman talaga gano'n distribution. So ngayon, pag yung 500, you can stratify it to whatever stratification or grouping you want. And then, you proportionally allocate, halimbawa, yung sample size mo is 250 lang. So you can proportionally allocate the 250 to the different data ng 500 mo. So you will not be able to, hindi mo ma-over-represent ang isang subpopulation. Gets nyo ko? I think you would need a statistics consultant to decide on that. Ako naman kasi, I'm a researcher. I'm not a statistician, but I know my statistics. But it would be good to really consult someone kung ano ang kanyang say. Okay, other than that, mayroon pang, okay, so you know your stratification, your stratification procedure. All right, ito yung stratified sampling. It is selecting a random sample from subgroups. The subgroups of elements have varied characteristics that can possibly affect observation. The population is stratified into more or less homogeneous subgroups or strata, and from each subgroup, a subsample is drawn using either simple random sampling or systematic sampling. So yan, ang one. And then the last natin is cluster sampling. Hindi ko na, yung multi-stage, hindi ko na gagamitin. No? Yung cluster naman, this is ito kung sa mga barangay, pwede kang, imbis na mag-sample ka per person, you can cluster them into several groups. So for example, you will be studying high school students. Ang high school students ay 10 section. At they are heterogeneous. Bawat class, bawat section ay hetero. Hindi sila homo. So instead, you need, halimbawa, you need 50 employees dito. Ay 10 opisina. 10 section. So ang pipiliin mo lang at random ay 5 section. So and then for each randomly selected section, you take all. You take all. So actually madali itong gamitin, pero ang assumption natin kasi is the assumption is each total population can be divided into clusters. All right, I think okay pa ba kayo? Baka wala nang nakikinig sa.
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay po, Doc.
Good.
I am really worried kasi sabi ko nga, 1 hour, this is a 1 semester subject, you know. And then I'm doing it in 1 hour and a half. Okay, ang data collection, I'll end with data collection kasi itong data collection napaka-critical. Assuming that yung ating samples representative. Ngayon, if we're not talking about inferential statistics, like gusto mo lang talagang mag-describe ng population, inferential statistics may not be necessary. Kasi pag take all ka, hindi na tayo nagtitest ng hypothesis eh. What you see is what you get. So hindi ka na is my result generalizable to the total population. Ngayon, pag talagang wala kayong magawa doon sa inyong sample, just discuss it according to what you did and just, meron kasi tayo namang section on scope and limitation eh. So you can just present its findings. Data collection is, I'm presenting kasi a very, very simple way of, ang problema kasi sa data collection, yung preparation of instruments. Kasi many times, ang question ng researcher is, ma'am, paano ko maka-validate nito? Paano ako maka-test for reliability? And many times, there are questionnaires na ang daming question, hindi mo naman magamit lahat na data. Meron namang mga questionnaires na kulang. So, hindi nila na-i-interpret o na-explain yung findings dahil nga kulang yung kanilang data. So, importante that the choice of procedure usually depends on the objectives and design of the study, the availability of time, money, and personnel, and the kind of data the researcher wishes to generate. Okay, now, maraming data collection procedures, no? But you should know where the sources or who are the sources of the data. There are 2 types of data, the quantitative and the qualitative data, the primary and the secondary sources of data. I think you understand already the difference between quanti and quali. No? Quantitative are countable or expressed in numerical values, whereas qualitative data are descriptive and have few numerical values. Examples of quanti: age, grades, income, test scores, number of children. Qualitative includes attitudes, perceptions, processes, experiences, views about certain issues like drug abuse, pollution, homosexuality, and domestic violence. All right. Ngayon kasi, I heard somebody say yesterday na, ma'am, pag doctoral tayo, we do not accept secondary data, dapat primary data dahil kailangan magkaroon ng experience ang tao ng primary data collection. I do not agree with that. I do not agree. That may be an institutional requirement, but you need not always go to the field if you have data not secondary which are officially recognized as correct, like census data. When I was with Ateneo, we were encouraged, in fact, we were encouraged to use data that are already existing pero hindi na-analyze. For example, if you look at the census data, they are all descriptions, di ba? They are all descriptions. Ngayon, you can draw some data and then make some more intricate or scientific statistical analysis like regression models. You can run partial or multiple correlation, etc. Kasi, like I'm doing now, I have been doing a lot of public health surveys for the last 15 years. 15 years na akong consultant ng isang big company. Where every year I run a public health survey in 20 barangays that are supposed to be target impact barangays of a coal-fired power plant. Ngayon, the requirement only of DENR is for me to present to them socioeconomic data, health data, housing data, and perceptions of the impact of the power plant to the people. That's all they want. Yun lang ang aking TOR. But when I was dean, I realized that ang daming data, there are so many data in my file na pwedeng gawan, paglaruan ng isang graduate student. So since I was teaching research and my students were Master of Arts in Nursing, Master of Arts in Teaching, data management. So I sabi ko sa mga nurses, I have a lot of health data of 7,000 people that belong to 2,000 households. There are so many things that you can do about it. One, what are the illnesses experienced by men versus illnesses experienced by women? Illnesses of 0 to 6-year-old children. And since I have all the socioeconomic factors, I can do correlation analysis in terms of what are the risk factors of certain illnesses. I don't have to let my students go back to the field again to look into these data and collect their data. So I fought for that, and I was able to get the approval of, well, I was the one who approves anyway because I was the dean. We had fought it out and said, approved it. So I don't know, but I do not have any qualms in convincing other schools because other schools have their own policies. And the rule usually in graduate school is you honor the institutional requirements. Ang hindi ko lang ma-honor na institutional practices is when graduate schools become diploma mills and allow their students to pay writers of their thesis. And there are many institutions who are still doing that. They pay consultants, quote unquote, but these are really consultants who are experts in manufacturing information. They are good writers, but when they come to the defense, the students could not defend their data. I think when I was dean, I have stopped 3 defenses and had to let them go back to the field because I discovered upon final defense that their data were not original data. So amo lang na. But again, who am I, who are we to question the policies of other schools? Although in that case, I have voiced that out sa page, kag sa chat, and I don't know what they did. Okay, so primary data, so pwedeng incidents. Like for example, Secondary data available like censuses, national surveys, etc. Quanti-quali, tapos na natin yan. Ito ang gusto ko kasing ituro, yung paano ka gagawa ng how do you now prepare your instruments. Okay?
Doc, can you consider po yung kunyari gumamit ka ng Google Form, Doc, tapos mga open-ended question, pwede na ba yun na mag-suffice sa qualitative side ng research mo, Doc?
Not enough. Kailangan mag-iterative ka. Kahit open-ended yung questions mo, kailangan mag-follow up ka. Kasi kung minsan, yung qualitative responses, halimbawa, open-ended question, why did you do this? Why did you do that? It's just really a description. You cannot really call it a qualitative research. Qualitative research.
Ano kasi siya, Doc, parang mixed method siya, Doc. Tapos ang data ay bali yung quanti, tapos i-explain niya through quali para may insight siya bakit yun yung pinili niya sa quanti. Parang support si quali ng quanti, parang mixed method siya, Doc. Pero ang ginamit lang na questionnaire ay yung sa Google Form nga, Doc.
I know what you're talking about because that issue has arrived. That's fine. I mean, but always tell in your report na your qualitative responses may limitasyon. So, usually they will give you one sentence. Ang totoong qualitative research really are researches that elaborates on about domestic violence. If I ask, for example, the question, do you know of anybody who had been abused? Yes. And then, anong kanyang experience? Ganito. What's your opinion about it? Hanggang dyan ka lang. Yung bang, again, you call it qualitative, but it's not the true qualitative study. Kasi yung qualitative study talagang iba ay talagang purely qualitative. May sinasabi tayong narrative. So, you can, as I'm saying, you can. But as long as you are clear of the limitations of the qualitative component of the study. So, halimbawa, you can say that you use mixed method. The first part, which is a study in itself, use quantitative because it's descriptive, relational. However, to delve further into the perceptions of respondents, you ask additional questions like this and like that, like this and like that. Limitation lang. That your limitation may mention that the answers may not be a product of really thinking. Yung bang, it's really an opinion, but you know, Google form ka. It takes how many minutes lang? It's yung bang, you cannot really call it as perception nga kung minsan. I mean, I have that in my current study. So what I do if there are, for example, questions na hindi ko maintindihan ang mga sagot, I call and follow up. So if you can follow
yes,
up.
Doc. Call and follow up, Doc.
At doon sa qualitative responses, you don't have to cover naman all the 500 eh. Kailangan yung qualitative kasi is, halimbawa, meron kang unique na mga sagot na hindi common sa yung sample. That is the time that you would need a qualitative follow-up. You know what I mean? Parang may uniqueness. Kasi,
yes, Doc. Yung parang Doc, parang kumbaga kung sa quanti mo, parang residual siya, hindi yun talaga yung mga extreme, yun yung i-delve further mo.
Yes, lowest, mga ganyan. Yun pwede mong i-follow up yun. At gawin mo qualitative. Kasi they cannot be reflected in the quantitative analysis. Kasi yung quantitative analysis talagang how many percent said this, how many percent does, what is the pattern of correlation among variables. There's a very good reference for mixed method, by the way. sa internet. Well, anyway, let me just finish this first. Okay, how do you, ito kasi ang critical eh. How do you prepare the instrument? Di ba? Ang instrumentation kasi for me is very critical because what you see is, you know, what you get spells out the findings. Parang garbage in, garbage out yan eh. Pag mali yung question mo at mali yung data mo, you may not be able to answer your research objectives. So in determining what information, the first step kasi in designing an instrument is, number one, determine what information to collect. We want a short but precise and concise instrument. So first of all, go back to your objectives of the study, identify the variables that you intend to measure. Third, specify the measures or indicators to be used and identify the questions for each variable or indicator. Meron naman akong table dyan. Okay, let's look at this one. Question number 1. Ito kati, for its objective, dapat meron kang analysis kung anong questions ang kailangan. Alright, number 1, to determine the extent of father's participation in the school activities of their children. So anong aking variables? Ang aking variable dyan, isa lang, which is extent of father's participation. Anong ibig sabihin yan? Ang ibig sabihin ko sa aking study is whether fathers are involved or not. If they are involved, what type of activities they are involved in, and how much time they spend in their children's school activities. Yun ang aking definition. So kung makikita mo, the questions that will appear in the instrument will be based on my operational definition. Hindi pwedeng magtanong ka nga, to what extent is the father involved? And then sasabihin mo, to what extent are you involved? And then you have their great extent. Wala kang detalye. So yun, kasi pwede pa rin itong gawan mo ng, ano ba to? Pwede po bang gawan ito ng additional definition? Like I could probably add na kung what fathers involved. Okay, meron akong how much time, the type of activities. Pwede mo ring sabihin ang extent of their involvement for each type of activity. Pwede ring dagdagan mo yon. Okay. So, anong magiging items mo sa yung questionnaire? Hindi pa tayo nag-organize ha, parang per instrument lang muna tayo. So, father's involvement in terms of what specific types of activities the fathers were involved in. So, anong tanong dyan? Simply, the first one is, are you involved? Okay. If no, pwede mong dagdagan ng why. If yes, anong mga activities? And then, for each activity, how much time do you spend with your child? Kung sabihin mo pang per day, per week, per month, pwede ring dagdagan. So, depende sa gusto mo, depende sa objectives mo. Pag hindi mo yan na-define, sayang. Kasi merong later on kasi, nare-realize ng estudyante, sana tinanong ko to, sana tinanong ko to. Especially when you are already presenting your paper and the advisor or the committee said, bakit hindi mo tinanong? Mga ganyan. So, ito yung mga procedure. So, to determine whether extent of participation varies according to age, educational attainment, or occupation. O ano naman ang variables dyan. Hindi ko na ililista uli yung extent of participation dahil na-define ko na yan sa number 1. So, yung variables ko is age, educational attainment, occupation. So, anong ibig sabihin ng age sa aking study? Sa aking study is as of last birthday. Kung ilang years old na siya. Kumukuha rin ako ng birthday kasi I want to make sure na tama yung edad niya. And then educational attainment, highest level of education completed. Okay, I ask additional data on school last attended, Kasi I want to verify na talagang nakatapos siya. So highest level or degree completed, occupation, whether gainfully working or not. If working, major work, spent most of their time. Kasi maraming, pwede rin sabihin mong major work from which the father receives the highest pay. So depende sa iyo, depende sa yung definition. So kung ano yung definition, yun din ang data na kukunin mo. Okay? So as you go along, makikita mo na kung anong kahaba ng instrument mo. Once meron ka ng ganon, you group the information items, making an outline, and group the items together, arrange topics in a particular sequence, such as chronological, logical, from easiest to most difficult, include items on respondents' identification and general biographical, if not included as study variables. I usually ask them to sa beginning, yung characteristic. Okay, something like this. So ang gawa nito from the table, ito na yung labas ng questionnaire mo. Ito yung name, blah, blah, blah. Then, educate natin. You will notice na wala kang maiiwan. Wala kang maiiwan. So you will be able to capture all the questions that you need, and you need not questions that you do not need. Actually, I have my file, I have a table, a questionnaire. I have a questionnaire. I already have. I don't know kung nakikita nyo to. If I show this, nakita nyo ba itong pinapakita kong instrument? Wala, hindi. So anyway, yan. The next after this is, I still have Chana, may mga plates pa ako, how these are really converted into an instrument. Kasi next, sana dito, ano yung format dapat ng instrument. Ngayon, kasi sa Google Form, madali lang yon dahil nga, kuminsan naka-format na ang Google Form. Eh. So, it's not difficult. Okay. I'm almost through. Any other thing that you want to ask about this lecture? Data processing, analysis, and interpretation requires another session. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Tita wants to tell you something.
Thank you.
Oh, what will you say?
Ngayon, video, Doc. Medyo good.
Thank you. Thank you po.
Thank you so much, Doc.
See?
Salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you po, Doc.
Salamat.
Doc, if we can get your email po. Doc, hopefully we can get your email po.
Okay. Okay, tingnan ko. Talagay ko na lang dito.
Thank you, Doc.
Where's the link po for evaluation?
Dr. David?
Hindi parang tatlo lang ang nagtatanong.
Good afternoon, Doc. Do we get certificates for this session?
Sino?
Hmm?
Kayo o ako?
No, later na kayo have to wash your hand.
The certificates po sana, Doc.
Oo.
Good afternoon.
Ako kasi I don't need certificate.
Good afternoon, Dr. David. Doc, there is one question in the chat room earlier. And it says, does all research needs to have a conceptual framework?
I gonna discuss. No. No. Kasi conceptual framework, kailangan lang yun experimental and correlation studies.
Yeah.
Kailangan. But some studies, for example, sa literature, nangangailangan sila ng theoretical perspective. So, wala yung framework. Yung para bagang it is only asking ano yung mga theoretical underpinnings ng isang study. So theories lang, pero hindi theoretical conceptual framework. So
Thank you so
nilalagay na lang yan sa chapter 2.
Thank you so much, Doc, for that answer.
Ano pa? Sige na. Oh,
Thank you so much, Doc.
Available pa naman.
Kumbaga, Doc, yung ano to, yung sa theory, yung theoretical, Doc, depende po sa study mo kung ano ang requirement niya.
Oh, of course. Of course. Ito ang
So, parang pag...
Ito ang aking kita niyo ang aking email ad.
Yes po. Yay.
Thank you so much, Dr. David.
Oh, wala nang tanong?
Salamat po.
There's no more questions,
Damo,
Dr.
salamat,
David.
Doc.
Thank you so much, Dr. Felipe David,
Thank you
for
po.
that
Thank you.
very interactive, insightful,
po.
and comprehensive discussion.
Thank you po.
Yung evaluation po, Doc, ano po yun? Ibibigay niyo po?
That you want me to respond to that I can address sa isang chat group lang kasi I don't want to answer individually. Baka I may not have the time. Meron ba kayong group chat that I can send the answer to your questions? Wala?
Wala po
Doc, pwede
ata.
nakagawa.
Gawa na lang po, Doc.
Probably the moderator can arrange that.
Come up with a
Moderator.
kasi kung meron kayong mga common questions, kasi I am so busy, I may not have the time to individually respond to an email.
Doc, where can we access the presentation?
Pinadala ko nga yan, sabi ko na nga, ipapadala ko yan kay Juan eh. Meron ba dito, pwede itong ikopyahan yun? Sino bang secretariat dyan?
I think it will be sent to the email or through our emails. It was yes, it was actually announced earlier.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, kanino ko i-email? Sabi ko nga kay Walter, ipapadala ko to sa secretariat para you can distribute this if you want.
Yes, ma'am, please. Because
Much better, Doc. Much better if you
Doc,
could send
pwede
to the
makahingi
secretariat.
Pwede kaya makahingi ng messenger mo, Doc? I-add ka namin, Doc.
Ang dami kong messenger. Kasi mayroon akong messenger bawat klase. Wala akong yung kung personal, ayoko kasing pumapasok kayo sa personal na messenger kasi kung minsan baka hindi ko ma-attensyonan. So, the best is there is one messenger, halimbawa sa organization. And then doon ko lang ipapasok.
Doc, I have a suggestion with regard to sending an emails to the participants, especially the certificates. Since the secretariat is the one responsible for this in sending the emails and invitations, much better you could send the information or the certificates or let's say this PowerPoint presentation to secretariat so that the secretariat would send the information to the emails where we received the message or the link from this seminar.
In fact, kahapon, I was already suggesting na ipapadala ko ang PowerPoint sa secretariat. So I sent it through Walter, who is not the secretariat, pero mayroon kasi akong dinagdag. And according to Walter, hindi na daw kailangan dahil ako na lang daw ang mag-present. So I can control it. But I can do that. I can tell Walter, I can email again the revised version kay Walter. And then si Walter na lang ang bahala sa secretariat and you can ask the secretariat to...
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. David. We will try to arrange it through the 5C secretariat. For the participants, kindly wait for the emails for the presentation to be sent to you.
Let me ask you, have you seen my book?
No, Doc, we haven't seen it. And We actually don't know the
Not yet,
title of
Doc,
the book.
but we are
Where can
willing
we avail
to
the book, Doc?
see the book.
I still have some copies.
Maganda yung aklat ni Doc David. Much better bumili po kayo kasi maganda yung book niya.
Where can we avail po?
Sa Kuan, there's, I don't know if they still have copies sa Jade Bookstore at saka the Tops. Oo. I still have a few copies here in my house. But I don't know how many they are. Mga 20 copies na lang.
Doc, is an ebook available?
Sa city.
Sa city. Doc, ebook, is ebook available?
No.
For that?
No. I did not have it ebook.
Okay.
Doc, we are very far from there. How can we avail of your book?
Saan kayo
Exactly.
We are from Luzon. We are from Luzon.
I'm from Mindanao, so I'm also, want to have an e-copy or ebook for that matter.
Sa akin, taga Sambales at taga Palawan. So I sent it via LBC.
Yes, Doc. Can we have it through LBC also? I'm from Quezon eh.
Doc, how much po?
Doc, how much po?
450 lang.
Doc, pa-avail po kami sana.
Yes.
Okay, what you do is group together, let's say tatlo kayo. So parang hindi magasto sa shipping.
Ay, okay lang, Doc. We can shoulder the shipping fee.
Doc, they can afford. So maybe you can, we can ask the secretariat to include it in the email with the certificates and the presentation, plus the information on how we can get the book, or avail of the book.
Just pay me the exact price and then the mailing. That's all. And then I will autograph your books.
Thank you po.
Yes, Doc.
Thank you very much, Doc.
And some inspirational words, Doc.
Salamat, Gid.
Salamat po, ma'am.
So you just tell me, no, kung ano, you let the secretariat communicate with me?
Yes, please. It should be, the process should be. The secretariat will coordinate with you, Doc. So it wouldn't be hard on your part if we will be, doing it one by one. So I think there should be one person who will coordinate with us and you, and then do everything and send everything through email, all the information through email. So it's going to be, in process or on process.
Okay, that will be done.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'll interrupt now.
Good.
I
hope I have contributed something new or something old, but refreshing.
Yes, okay.
Refreshing is the right word, Doc. Refreshing is the right word. It's refreshing.
Taga-aso, oh.
Considering of the time,
I need for your email.
But we're looking forward to your next workshop or webinar, if there will be in the future.
When there is no more COVID, when there's no more COVID, I have been actually doing this for other schools via Zoom. Like last week, I did it for month, I did it for ISAT, I did it for Antique. Actually, I can do the Zoom training, halimbawa sa inyong school, sa inyong school. We can also do that. Pero kailangan lang talaga mga 1 month na lead time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. David, for that very interactive, insightful, and comprehensive discussion. It is indeed a very big help, especially to those graduate students who are working on their research paper at the present. So indeed, research is very dynamic and evolving. So thank you very much for the inputs, Dr. David. I would like to request for the certificate of recognition to Dr. David to be flashed on screen as our way of appreciating your expertise and in your time extended as a source speaker for this national conference for 21st
First term
century
niya last year yata.
educators.
Karon na sa mga incentive sa makuha siyang anak. 50%.
I would request for the technical secretariat to flash the certificate of recognition.
Gani, murag ano gyapon na siya, di ba? Murag mahulog gyapon nag 100%.
Yeah. Philippine Institute of the 21st Century Educators
Wala kay
Incorporated
ano, wag yan
awards
dapat
the
kabar day no.
certificate of recognition to Dr. Felipe David for imparting her invaluable time, resources, and expertise as a source speaker on the topic research methodology for teachers and students, a simplified approach during the conduct of National Virtual Conference for 21st Century Educators, accorded this 22nd day of March 2021 through Zoom video conferencing and live streamed in POMI YouTube channel and PAISE 21 Facebook page, signed by Ricky A. Kebinko, MAT, LPT, Virtual Conference Director, and Emijan P. Indanila Palmani, MEd, LPT, National President of PAISE 21. Thank you so much, Dr. Felipe David, and congratulations.
Thank you, Doc.
The evaluation link has been made available on the chat room. You may now start evaluating the conference this afternoon, and it is now being flashed on the screen also. You can also watch the telecast later on the POMI YouTube channel and Facebook page of the PAISE 21 for the recording of the conference. We would like also to announce that on June, there will be an international virtual conference. So we'll be sending out the invitations the soonest possible time. And we also acknowledge the participation of all, especially the graduate students from the Iloilo Science and Technology University who are in most number this afternoon, and also to other educators from the different basic and higher educational institutions all over the country. So thank you so much for joining us. Hope to see you again virtually in our next event.
Sir?
Thank you so much.
Sir? Excuse me, sir.
Yes, good afternoon.
Sir, good afternoon. Sir, I cannot access the link for the evaluation. Can you please send that in my email, in my Gmail?
Yes, sir.
You can please request the email, the invitation, reply there so that the technical secretariat can reply it back to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much. So once again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us and for attending. This is Cyril S. De La Fuente hosting. Good afternoon and please keep safe, everyone. Thank you so much. God bless us all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, everyone. Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Goodbye
See you
po.
tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, thank you. Oh, everyone who are still here, before you depart, please,
sir.
sorry. Can we request to have a photo op for those participants who are still here?
Sige po, sige po.
Doc, sir, can I ask, do you also have separate seminar for perhaps is a statistical tool introduction like PSPP, PSPP or SPSS software introduction?
Yeah, thank you so much for that inquiry, Miss. I would like to address that to the organizing team also, and of course we are also finalizing some sessions in the future.
I cannot see
We are
myself.
going to coordinate it with you soon. Thank you so much. May I request for the technical secretariat to start documenting now the photo opportunity that we have for the participants this afternoon.
Paki-open po ng ibang camera.
The technical staff, please.
Okay, so good afternoon, ma'am, sir. Okay, so please open your camera. So we have here 6 panels. Okay, so panel number 1. Okay, so please smile. Okay, so ready. 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, so for a moment. So for a moment lang, ma'am. Okay, so panel number 2.
What do we know?
Okay, so ready? 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, so panel number 3. Okay, so panel number 3. So ready? 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, so panel number 4. Okay, so ready? 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, so panel number 5. Okay, so ready? 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, so panel number 6. Okay, so ready? 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, so thank you guys.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you po. Hope to see another webinar for
Yes, thank you so much. The invitations will be out soon. We'll send you the invitation soon. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Our
thank you.
pleasure on behalf of
Bye-bye.
Paika 21. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
You're
Hello,
welcome.
sir.
Yes.
Sir,
Yes,
itatanong
ma'am.
ko lang po. Di ba meron pong yung 3 organization na nagpa-member po kami. After po nito, sir, yun po ba ang the time na ipapa-LBC niyo yung certificate and the docs?
I will coordinate with you soon, ma'am. I will address that to the technical secretariat.
Sige po, kasi last week pa po yun eh. Salamat po, sir.
For the in charge, yes po. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please keep safe, everyone. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
God willing. God bless po. Thank you.
God bless everyone.